Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 326 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where I will not again make any long journey save one.
After all, you are ancient in years now. Folks, I'm James Towther, the Sage of the South, and I'm here with the Man of the West, who, let's face it, hasn't gotten any younger since last time I co-hosted with him. Alan Sisto.
Actually, I have news for you. I have. It's the curious case of Benjamin Button, and I'm actually a year younger than I was the last time you were here.
Still older than me.
Oh, well, I did sort of set myself up for that one. All right. Sounds like you're begging leave to depart soon, James. So your first episode and you're already itching to find the door. All right. Welcome back to the PPP, by the way. Thank you for coming back. And folks, join us as hobbits get gifts from beautiful women in the first of our 3 episodes on Many Partings, the 6th chapter in Book 6 of The Lord of the Rings.
Just don't get Gimli and Éomer arguing about which gift is better.
Let alone which gift giver, yeah.
Yes, indeed. No matter how you arrived, folks, you are all welcome here in the common room. At the Prancing Pony Podcast, we're reading and talking our way through Middle-earth, with plenty of speculation and bad jokes along the way.
Only some of which I've written. We love deep dives into the lore, discussing our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
But we try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
And I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time for one of our quietly favorite segments. It's criminally underused, really. Questions before bedtime.
Hi, I'm Dennis. I'm 10. I've been reading Lord of the Rings with my mom, and I have a question. Are Balrogs really immortal? Thank you.
All right, James, it's your first time back, so I'm going to let you take the lead on this one. We know they don't have wings, but what about Dennis's question? Are Balrogs really immortal?
Well, it's a great question, but
It is.
do not go to the sage for answers, for he will say both yes and no.
Of course, waffling from the start. Go right ahead.
No, because the physical form of a Balrog can be killed. He can be destroyed in that physical sense.
So not immortal in a physical sense.
But yes, because the spirit of the Balrog is itself immortal.
Right.
So if we go back to the Valaquenta in the published Silmarillion to give us some foundation, those of the Ainur who desired it arose and entered into the world at the beginning of time, until the time appointed was made Arda. Then they put on the raiment of earth and descended into it and dwelt therein. So these Ainur are spirits that came into existence out of the thought of Eru Ilúvatar, the One.
Right. Now, these Ainur are themselves broken down into 2 classes, Dennis. The text tells us the great among these spirits, the elves name the Valar, the powers of Arda, and men have often called them gods. And then later we read about the second group of the Ainur, and this is what it says. With the Valar came other spirits whose being also began before the world, of the same order as the Valar, but of less degree. These are the Maiar, the people of the Valar, and their servants and helpers. Now, that all kind of starts to give us the pieces that we need to bring this together, but it's when we read about the former Vala named Melkor that we get a little bit more. Yet so great was the power of his uprising that in ages forgotten he contended with Manwë and all the Valar, and through long years in Arda held dominion over most of the lands of the earth. But he was not alone, for of the Maiar, many were drawn to his splendor in the days of his greatness, and remained in that allegiance down into his darkness, and others he corrupted afterwards to his service with lies and treacherous gifts. Dreadful among these spirits were the Valaraukar, the scourges of fire that in Middle-earth were called the Balrogs, demons of terror.
So the Balrogs are Maiar spirits, which means they're of the Ainur, originally beings of spirits that are now wearing the raiment of earth. Forms of demons surrounded by shadow and fire and carrying whips of flame.
But not wings.
So they are, therefore...
I just had to get that in there, but not wings. Just
not wings.
Metaphorical wings.
Metaphorical wings, yes. But they are... That's okay. Significantly, though, they are immortal beings.
Right.
Their spirits cannot be killed. Their bodies, on the other hand, I mean, consider Sauron, right? Sauron was killed at least twice before Frodo destroyed the ring. 3 times, actually. When he fought with Huan,
Oh, yeah. My goodness, we go all the way back. Yeah.
he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly.
Yeah.
Ere his foul spirit left its dark house. Luthien forced him to give up the tower. Then he lost his bodily form when Numenor fell.
Yep.
And then died again when the ring was taken from him. And it took him centuries to regain any shape at all.
And Dennis, he was also a Maya, right? He was not a Vala. He was not of the high levels. He was like Melkor's primary Maya, but he was still a Maya spirit, just as the Balrogs were. Gandalf comes to mind as well as another Maya who died. His spirit went back to the Timeless Halls. He was given a new body. But I have to say, that's probably not the best example to give you, Dennis, because he wasn't wearing raiment like Sauron. He was actually incarnate. The wizards were Maiar spirits, but they were actually in real bodies as opposed to just raiment. So he couldn't change his appearance the way the Maiar could. But still, definitely their bodies were capable of being killed. I mean, Glorfindel killed a Balrog.
Ecthelion
killed the Balrog. You're right.
So it's interesting. One thing about Balrogs is they changed over the development of the Legendarium.
Yes, they did. That's
so
true.
their status as Maiar was really only settled on during the writing of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
In the Book of Lost Tales, they weren't nearly so powerful, and there were actually thousands of them.
Right, and that's because they weren't so powerful. If you make them that powerful and there's thousands of them, the world is over. Yeah.
But by the time of Lord of the Rings, Tolkien had settled on there perhaps being as few as 3 of them, and certainly no more than 7 of them.
Yep, I remember that exact quote. Yeah, no more than 7. Yeah, and as opposed to the thousands that we see in like the drafts of The Fall of Gondolin, for instance. Yeah, but you're right. They weren't originally considered in those early story versions to be Maiar spirits, but once we get to the versions of the Balrogs that we see in The Lord of the Rings and in the published version of the Silmarillion, they very much were.
Yep.
And in fact, that's actually as a published Silmarillion where we got most of those texts about the nature of the Valaraukar. So in terms of Maiar being killed, having their bodies be killed, what happens to a Maya when their bodies are destroyed? And I'm not talking about a Gandalf because he's actually incarnate, so his spirit had to go all the way to the Timeless Halls, and Eru's like, yeah, we're not done. We're going to send you back. But what about these others?
It's tough because we have a bunch of examples of Maiar leaving Middle-earth, but they're all different. Every case is different.
Every one of them is
Sauron
different, right?
is different from Gandalf. Melian, of course, we have. She left by her own choice, essentially, but none of them quite fits the situation with
Saruman
the Balrog.
even? Definitely not the same as Gandalf.
Yes.
I mean, if anybody comes close to actually making the argument that a Maya can die, it's Saruman, because his spirit gets kind of blown away. And that's an interesting thought, but it's not clear 100% what happens. I tend to think of him the way Tolkien has described Sauron after the destruction of the ring, as basically an impotent spirit, houseless and unable to really do anything other than just suffer his existence. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that use of the word house, which we read in that quote, right? Ere his foul spirit left its dark house.
Yeah.
So that metaphor, I think, works particularly well in all of the cases where Maya's body is killed.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because it is. And the interesting thing here is that arguably you would say the same thing about elves, and you would even say the same thing about men. Because even though their spirits leave Arda, their spirits are not destroyed when they die. We just don't know where they go.
Yep.
Elves, on the other hand, of course, they go to the Halls of Mandos, or they're summoned to the Halls of Mandos. They don't have to go, but they really should. And they can, after a time of waiting, get a new body and come back. Men, on the other hand, don't get that choice unless you're barren. But, there's always an exception to prove the rule. But their spirits still exist. They are beings that once they have a spirit, that spirit endures forever in some form or another, in some place or another. The difference here is that with these Ainur, which, the Valar are some and the Maiar are the others, these Ainur spirits came into being differently than any other spirits. They came into being directly from.
Yeah, they have a pre-existence.
Exactly. They exist before time.
And they take on an appearance as opposed to elves and humans aren't taking on an appearance.
No. They're given an appearance at birth. Exactly. That's fair. That's a very good point. But you can't kill the Balrog spirit, but you can kill the Balrog's body. And I'm not going to say it's easy. I mean, Glorfindel and Ecthelion and Gandalf
Yeah.
are the only ones who've managed the task that we're aware of.
Not to get too off topic, but one question that came up as I was thinking about this is the choice of body that the Balrogs took.
Yeah.
So, if you think about when they fell, when did they become persuaded by Melkor?
Yeah.
When did they take on the bodies that they took?
Right.
Could they have taken on a different body? Could they change their bodies? There's a bunch of interesting questions there.
There really are, and that's probably beyond the scope of this question. But I know there's some things on there's some bits about, I think it's about Melian, and it's a discussion about her and whether she would be able to take on a new raiment, specifically because of the actions that she took in her raiment, and that is the begetting of a child.
Yes.
Right. And that the more things that you do that tie you to the earth, that tie you to mortality, the less you are able to change your body.
It kind of locks in that particular form.
It locks you in. I get the feeling the Balrogs are toast. Like they can't change their form any more than Sauron could change his form anymore.
Yep.
I mean, there got to a point where after Anatar was exposed and, after all that, he was no longer ever able to go back to that fair form. I have a feeling the Balrogs are sort of stuck.
Yeah. And I will take this opportunity to say, beside the whole wing controversy, I also think Balrogs are much more humanoid than they're typically portrayed. Yes.
Yeah. Man shape, but maybe twice as high, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're riding dragons. They're essentially in some senses, I see them as analogical to the Nazgul.
Yes. Yeah.
They're to Melkor what the Nazgul are to Sauron.
Definitely the chief, I mean, they are the chief lieutenants. We know that Gothmog was very much, the right hand of Melkor. And they are man-shaped. They are maybe twice as tall at the most, about 12 feet high maybe, and surrounded by shadow and flame. They've got the whip of flame. They've got that sword of flame.
And that shadow can sometimes look an awful lot like wings.
Exactly. The shadow can spread and fill the room like two vast wings. Doesn't actually make them wings. But, that's a whole nother question. And we already know where we stand on that. Good question, though, Dennis. Good question.
So those are always fun intro segments. And I'm glad we finally got to Dennis's question.
It has been there for a while. I'm sorry about that.
It deserved a longer answer as a result.
It did.
But Alan, would you like to start us out with tonight's chapter reading?
I will. I'm going to skip a couple paragraphs because, as we say, we always have to skip something. It is true that I wish to go back to the Shire, said Frodo. But first I must go to Rivendell. For if there could be anything wanting in a time so blessed, I missed Bilbo. And I was grieved when among all the household of Elrond I saw that he was not come. Do you wonder at that, Ring-bearer? Said Arwen. For you know the power of that thing which is now destroyed, and all that was done by that power is now passing away. But your kinsman possessed this thing longer than you. He is ancient in years now, according to his kind, and he awaits you. For he will not again make any long journey, save one. Then I beg leave to depart soon, said Frodo. In 7 days we will go, said Aragorn, for we shall ride with you far on the road, even as far as the country of Rohan. In 3 days now, Éomer will return hither, to bear Théoden back to rest in the Mark, and we shall ride with him to honor the fallen. But now, before you go, I will confirm the words that Faramir spoke to you. And you are made free forever of the realm of Gondor, and all your companions likewise. And if there were any gifts that I could give to match with your deeds, you should have them. But whatever you desire you shall take with you, and you shall ride in honor and arrayed as princes of the land. But the Queen Arwen said, A gift I will give you, for I am the daughter of Elrond. I shall not go with him now when he departs to the havens. For mine is the choice of Luthien, and as she, so have I chosen, both the sweet and the bitter. But in my stead you shall go, Ring-bearer, when the time comes, and if you then desire it. If your hurts grieve you still, and the memory of your burden is heavy, then you may pass into the west, until all your wounds and weariness are healed. But wear this now, in memory of Elfstone and Evenstar, with whom your life has been woven. And she took a white gem like a star that lay upon her breast, hanging upon a silver chain, and she set the chain about Frodo's neck. "When the memory of the fear and the darkness troubles you," she said, "this will bring you aid." And I'll stop there.
Now, we always have to skip something, and here it's the first two paragraphs.
Of course.
But there we're told that when the days of rejoicing were over, and so it's July 15th, right? Everyone knows that's when the rejoicing days are over, right?
That's right. July 14th is a great day. July 15th, no more rejoicing. We're all done. There'll be no more rejoicing here. No, we know it's July 15th because of the Tale of Years. Not that the Tale of Years actually tells us what this day is, but it does say that on July 18th, Éomer returns to Minas Tirith. And as we read in the section that I did read, in 3 days now, Éomer will return hither. So therefore, it's July 15th.
Yep. Now, not surprisingly, it's time for people to start thinking about home. Mm-hmm. After all, Frodo was talking about that a while back, last chapter. Mm-hmm. Frodo said to Gandalf, "Do you know what day this is that Aragorn speaks of? For we are happy here, and I don't wish to go. But the days are running away, and Bilbo is waiting, and the Shire is my home."
That's right. And that we know was sometime in May. We know it was actually after May 8th, but we still know it was May. So a solid couple of months have passed between then and now as Frodo goes over to Aragorn and Arwen to ask, is it time?
Yeah. I can't help but note that Arwen is singing a song of Valinor and the tree.
Yeah.
Well, correlation isn't causation, but it sure seems like the tree's growing and blossoming is connected.
Doesn't it?
And I think the important thing here is that the significance of the tree is in its lineage, right? There's a connection between the tree and Valinor.
Yeah.
It's descended
no matter which version we go with, right? I mean, I know Gandalf calls it a fruit of Telperion that Galathilion is, and then this is a descendant from that.
Yep.
Published Silmarillion says, hey, you forgot about Celeborn, and really this is just the descendant of a tree made in the image, but 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
That's why I chose the word there's a connection to Valinor. And in a way that
one way or the other.
The tree is a bit of Valinor in Middle-earth,
isn't it? I know.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so it's not surprising that it would react to that song.
And then we're not told that that's really the case, but boy, it sure does feel that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's the use of the word while the tree grew and blossomed that I think lends to there being a strong connection between the singing and the tree growing. Yeah.
I agree. I mean, first we see the tree in the last chapter fruitfully, gladly growing, right? I mean, there's this idea of the tree itself sort of having a satisfaction in its new place. And it was eager to go because, when Aragorn touched it, it was barely in the ground,
right?
Which is like, okay, well, I'm glad we got here when we did. But the fact that it's responding to Arwen singing a song of Valinor, I wish I could hear that song. It would be lovely. It would be some most beautiful Quenya, I'm sure. Oh, it'd be just absolutely wonderful. So many little bits and pieces that we don't actually hear. But anyway, Aragorn, of course, he's well aware of Frodo's feelings, and he sort of takes the sting out of it. Right? He preempts Frodo's words, and I know you're here. I know why you're here, man. And he first offers his praise, and then he gives this proverb: "The tree grows best in the land of its sires." Now, I like that. I like the way that sounds. I like the truth of that. But I have to say, I'm not 100% sure that's really true for Frodo. I mean, most of his growth has happened since he left the Shire. And we all know that returning to the Shire isn't going to heal him.
Right.
It's an interesting way of putting it, though.
Yeah, it is. And of course, Aragorn makes it clear that he will always be welcome anywhere Aragorn has power or influence in all the lands of the West.
That's right.
He also points out that it's not just that Frodo is famous, it's that Frodo has given all of a hobbit kind a tremendous amount of renown.
Oh, absolutely. People didn't know who they were before. Now they do. And, destroying the enemy of the world does tend to have that sort of impact on your fame. But now picking up where I actually started reading, Frodo explains, yeah, I do want to go back. But first, and even more importantly, I want to go to Rivendell. I want to see Bilbo.
Yeah, he misses Bilbo, and he was sad to see that he wasn't with the wedding party.
I know, I would have thought that too, right? Bilbo, I mean, Gandalf even said Bilbo's waiting for the same day.
Right.
Bilbo knows what's going on. You don't, but yeah.
Yeah. And Arwen asks him if he could really be surprised by that and pointedly calls him ring bearer.
Yeah.
Not Frodo. Yeah.
Yeah.
As if to remind him of why Bilbo could not possibly have made this long trek.
Yeah.
We know that you know the power of the One Ring more than any other. You know that everything accomplished by the power of the ring is fading away.
Yeah, and she would know this as well. I mean, obviously her father doesn't bear the one ring, but he bears one of the three rings, and everything that was accomplished by the power of those rings is also fading right now.
Yeah. But significantly, one of the things that the power of the ring accomplished was the extended life and apparent youth of Bilbo throughout the time that he possessed the ring.
That's right. Now, after he gave up the ring to Frodo, about 17 years ago now, he aged a little. At least he seems to have thought so himself, right? He tells Frodo that he thought, this is when they're in Rivendell, I thought several times of going back to Hobbiton for the ring, but I'm getting old and they would not let me. There's nothing that really clarifies that he was looking older that I could find, but you certainly get this sense that he is now a little older. I mean, certainly the way they treat him at the council, like, oh no, you're not going to do this. Your time is done, Bilbo. It's not up to you. A quick aside, by the way, that's from the chapter Mini Meetings, and it brings me to this point, which is that the chapter's title here, Many Partings, is named in contrast with Mini Meetings, sort of like an unexpected party and a long expected party. I love the way Tolkien's named his chapters.
I mean, this is in many respects a book ending, right?
Yeah.
The many meetings starts off the kicking off of the fellowship, and then this is really the ending in some
Everything
senses.
before Mini Meetings is really prologue.
Yep.
And in a way, everything after Many Partings is epilogue. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very good point. Yeah.
Anyway, giving up the ring is one thing, and some aging is to be expected, but now with the ring gone, Bilbo's natural age is upon him. He's as old as any hobbits have ever been.
That's right. Yeah, he's right up there with the old Took.
Yeah, and Gollum knew this would happen to him too. Right? When precious goes, we die. Yes, die into the dust. Now, of course, Gollum was a lot older than Bilbo, well beyond the possible years of a mortal being.
Yeah.
So I suspect his death would have been nearly instantaneous.
Yeah, I do.
Right? He had so much his body had so much to catch up on.
Right.
Bilbo is just suddenly very, very old.
Very old, yeah. Yeah, we speculated about that, Matt and I, in the Mount Doom chapter. Like, what would have happened had the ring managed to be destroyed without Gollum falling into the fire? I very much picture Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail and the guy who chose poorly.
Yes.
Where it's like you get 10 or 15 seconds of life and all those 100 and some odd, 500 years happen in those seconds and your body just completely disintegrates. And Gollum, I think he was right when he says, we'll die, yes, die into the dust. And I think he quite literally meant that. And that's Arwen's point here. Look, Bilbo had the ring, Frodo, a lot longer than you. And that's true. 60 years versus 17. And he honestly probably wore it more often too, back before he knew what it was, just to avoid the Sackville Baggins.
Exactly.
Else. And now he is truly ancient. He cannot make a journey like this one. He can't travel for months. He's only got one journey left. And look, we know that is his journey into the West. It's his journey to the Grey Havens and then off into the Undying Lands. But let's be honest, that's very clearly also a metaphor for death.
Yeah. And so Frodo would like to leave ASAP then.
Yeah, Bilbo's dying. Let's go, man.
Yeah, if Bilbo might not live much longer, we need to get a move on.
Yeah.
So Aragorn explains that they'll leave in 1 week, and they will on July 22nd.
That's right. He does give them the itinerary. We're going to come with you all the way to Rohan. Just please wait 3 days for King Éomer to come back, and then another 4 days for us to, hang out with Éomer for a little bit, let him rest before we turn around and go, as we'll be taking Théoden back to lay him to rest in Rohan. And that's when he then goes back to the words of Faramir, which I have to imagine Faramir must have conveyed to him at some point in his role as steward, right? When he's catching him up on the story. Oh yeah, I ran into Frodo and Sam and Ithilien, and here's what happened. And he makes Frodo a free man in Gondor.
So let's revisit that from Book 4, Chapter 6.
Let's.
The Forbidden Pool. Then I will declare my doom, said Faramir. As for you, Frodo, insofar as lies in me under higher authority, I declare you free in the realm of Gondor, to the furthest of its ancient bounds. This doom shall stand for a year and a day, and then cease, unless you shall before that term come to Minas Tirith and present yourself to the lord and steward of the city. Then I will entreat him to confirm what I have done, and to make it lifelong.
Well, surprisingly, that was March 8th, so he has certainly beat the year and a day time limit. The way time flies from, really the breaking of the fellowship, right? I mean, that's when it just accelerates and goes so quickly. But yeah, it's only been like 3 months or a little over 4 months, right? March 8th to July 15th. Wild to think that it's been only that long. But now Aragorn has done what Faramir wished, right? To confirm it and make it lifelong.
Not just Frodo and Sam, but Merry and Pippin as well. Not that Faramir could have known about them back on March 8th.
That's a good point. And then Aragorn speaks of gifts, and this is interesting. I mean, he acknowledges, like, there are no gifts, and there aren't, that could possibly match the deeds that Frodo has accomplished. That's fair. But then he basically says, so take what you want, which, I mean, come on. Frodo's not going to take anything.
Yeah.
That's a non-gift. Let me know if I can send you something.
But they'll also ride in honor and be dressed like royalty. And this will come in handy when they get back to the Shire.
That's right. But here's the real gift. Arwen offers Frodo her place at the Havens, her trip back to the Undying Lands that she can no longer take. And I think there is a lot to talk about here. So we're going to dive in. First up, she reiterates here what we've known to be true. She will not be going with Elrond to the Undying Lands.
Yeah. I mean, this, on the face of it, is really an amazing gift.
Isn't it? Yeah.
She says, I shall not, but it's more than that. She cannot. As we'll read next year, when the Prancing Pony podcast covers the appendices to The Lord of the Rings, this decision was made quite some time ago.
That's right.
She says that hers is the choice of Luthien. That is, she's chosen to be mortal and love a mortal man, just as Luthien, daughter of Thingol, king of Doriath, and Melian, the Maya, as we talked about before.
That's right. We talked about her earlier. Yeah.
Chose to love Beren and gave up her elvish immortality, her serial longevity, to be more precise, to do so.
Yeah, I know. We immortality is a nice little shorthand, but I always end up saying serial longevity anyway. So it's just one of those things. So going to those appendices, Aragorn is preparing to depart, right? He's going to lay down his life willingly. That's something that the Númenóreans are given the ability to do. And as he's at that point, at the very end of his life, he says to Arwen, the uttermost choice is before you, to repent and go to the Havens and bear away into the west the memory of our days together, that shall there be evergreen, but never more than memory, or else to abide the doom of men.
But she knows the choice is a fiction. Right? The decision has been made. Nay, dear Lloyd, that choice is long over. There is now no ship that would bear me hence, and I must indeed abide the doom of men, whether I will or I nill.
So here's the thing, though, and this is where I have questions. She's already made that choice. How is it that she can give her now non-existent spot on the ship from the Grey Havens?
Right.
It's not hers to give anymore. She surrendered that immortality, that serial longevity ages ago. So for that, I want to go, as we so often do, to the letters. And we're going to go to letter 246 to Eileen Elgar. It's one that we've looked at a few times this season, mostly about the idea that Frodo failed, right, at Mount Doom. It's the letter where Tolkien says, I do not think that Frodo's was a moral failure. And there are so many good quotes from this letter.
Yeah, indeed. And there's this comment about Frodo post-ring, but then he thought that he had given his life in sacrifice. He expected to die very soon, but he did not. And one can observe the disquiet growing in him. Arwen was the first to observe the signs and gave him her jewel for comfort and thought of a way of healing him. Slowly he fades out of the picture, saying and doing less and less.
So Tolkien mentions this jewel that Arwen gives to Frodo at the end of this passage. That's nice enough, but it's a footnote to that comment that gives us what we want for this discussion. Even without the question of how did she give away what she no longer had? I mean, that's a good question, but Tolkien didn't have that. He still answered it anyway. He gave us a really good explanation. He says, at first, it is not made explicit how she could arrange this. She could not, of course, just transfer her ticket on the boat like that. Sorry, Frodo. It's a middle seat. Nothing I can do. And you'll probably need to check your carry-on. You're in like boarding group 8. You're ruined, man.
I was just going to say before we continue, this idea of him fading out of the picture, saying less and doing less and less. It's really interesting because one of the things that I've done in the Digital Tolkien Project is tracked character mentions over time.
Yes.
And one of the interesting things, if you look at a comparison between when Frodo is mentioned and when Sam is mentioned, Frodo dominates the first half. And then by the middle, it's actually pretty even, Frodo and Sam. And then you get to book 6, and Sam is mentioned more often than Frodo is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that fading out of the picture actually comes out in the numbers, counting just how many times the characters.
I totally buy that. I mean, you know that's true. Like somehow inherently, the more you've read the book,
feel it.
You feel that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Tolkien goes on explaining that Frodo and other non-elves were not allowed to sail to the west, and that exceptions required authority, adding the complication that Arwen wasn't in direct communication with the Valar, especially not since her choice to become mortal.
Can't hear you.
That also confirms what we just read earlier. This decision was already done for her.
Exactly. It's in the past. So here is the answer, and Tolkien gives it to us quite clearly. What is meant, he says, is that it was Arwen who first thought of sending Frodo into the west and put in a plea for him to Gandalf, direct or through Galadriel, or both. And she used her own renunciation of the right to go west as an argument. Her renunciation and suffering were related to and enmeshed with Frodo's. Both were parts of a plan for the regeneration of the state of men. Her prayer might therefore be specially effective, and her plan have a certain equity of exchange. Oh man, I love the way he's thought that out.
That's amazing. I mean, it's beautiful that it's not authority that she has, it's a plea that she has made on Frodo's behalf. And Tolkien imagines it was Gandalf who was the authority that accepted this offer. After all, he points out, the appendices show clearly that he was an emissary of the Valar, and virtually their plenipotentiary in accomplishing the plan against Sauron. Plenipotentiary, that's a good word.
I love that word. That is a great word right there. I got to use plenipotentiary more often.
Tolkien continues, he was also in special accord with Círdan the shipmaster, who had surrendered to him his ring and so placed himself under Gandalf's command. Since Gandalf himself went on the ship, there would be, so to speak, no trouble either at embarking or at the landing.
He's with me. The bouncer at the gates of Valinor. I'm sorry, you're too short. There's a... You must be as tall as this sign to enter. No, it's an interesting bit there about, though, how by giving him his ring, Círdan is said to have placed himself under Gandalf's command. I know that's a total, it's not related to this at all, but that is an interesting statement to make. But still, the point here is clear. Gandalf was asked to make the decision, had the authority to do so, and the ability to carry it out.
Yeah. I just want to say another, props to Círdan. Just as yet another reason why I think Círdan is one of the most underrated people. Yeah, in terms of just doing whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's the beard.
But anyway, it was still Frodo's choice to accept that gift, right? If you desire it.
That's right.
But Arwen Shaw seems prophetic here in her description of what we know will be Frodo's future state of mind, right? Hurts grieving him, memory of his burden heavy, wounded and weary.
Yeah, I mean, he must not strike people as that right now. I mean, this time of celebration, this time of feasting and the marriage, and there's so much joy. I'm sure we're not seeing the weary and wounded Frodo that we will see when he returns to the Shire, especially as, we reach anniversary dates and things. But boy, she really does seem to be speaking prophetically here, no doubt about it. So until then, here, have this necklace. There isn't much on this, and by not much, I mean nothing. But it is very clearly the piece of jewelry that inspired Jackson's even star that she gives to Aragorn as a sign of her love and her taking on his immortality. But I do like to think, though, given Elrond's descent from Luthien and his obvious abilities as a healer, that when she says this will bring him aid when he is struck by the memory of the fear and the darkness, that it actually does, that it offers concrete help in a way sort of like the Elessar, that it actually has some sort of healing powers or properties. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we do see this gem again and Frodo's reliance on it in the Grey Havens, twice in fact. First, on March 13th, important date, Farmer Cotton found Frodo lying on his bed. He was clutching a white gem that hung on a chain about his neck, and he seemed half in a dream. "It is gone forever," he said, "and now all is dark and empty." But the fit passed, and when Sam got back on the 25th, Frodo had recovered, and he said nothing about himself. So March 13th, that date was, of course, the anniversary of Frodo being captured by the orcs in Cirith Ungol, right after being stung by Shelob.
Which is why he's saying it is gone forever. Now all is dark and empty. Yeah,
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So then later, after Sam marries Rosie and Merry and Pippin are riding around the Shire in their mail shirts, we read that Frodo and Sam, however, went back to ordinary attire, except that when there was need, they both wore long gray cloaks, finely woven and clasped at the throat with beautiful brooches, and Mr. Frodo wore always a white jewel on a chain that he often would finger. So, whether it's a placebo effect or whether there's actual healing properties in this gem, Frodo certainly is relying on it during these difficult times. And so, again, I'd like to think that there really is something. But we won't know. We just can't. But we will come back to the story right after the break. Well, folks, we'll get back just in time for a death match between Éomer and Gimli in just a moment. But first, we want to remind you there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just me and James.
Absolutely. The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
On Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony podcast. Follow the page to get the news, but you're going to want to join the group for some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at prancingponypod. And if you haven't picked up the book that Alan and Sean wrote, Why We Love Middle-earth, well, what are you waiting for? It's a friendly introduction to new fans of Tolkien and a helpful guide for Middle-earth veterans, with sections on the books, on adaptations, and on ways you can take part in the fandom. There's something for everyone.
That certainly was the idea. And of course, if you want daily Tolkien content, please check out Today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. It's my short format daily show with everything from Mailbag Monday to Silmarillion Saturday. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes and follow @TolkienTimes on all your social media. For now, though, let's get back to Gimli and Éomer. James, would you pick up?
I would love to. In 3 days, as the king had said, Éomer of Rohan came riding to the city, and with him came an Ered of the fairest knights of the Mark. He was welcomed, and when they sat all at table in Merethrond, the great hall of feasts, he beheld the beauty of the ladies that he saw, and was filled with great wonder. And before he went to his rest, he sent for Gimli the dwarf, and he said to him, Gimli, Glóin's son, have you your axe ready? Nay, lord, said Gimli, but I can speedily fetch it if there be need. You shall judge, said Éomer, for there are certain rash words concerning the lady in the golden wood that lie still between us, and now I have seen her with my eyes. Well, lord, said Gimli, and what say you now? Alas, said Éomer, I will not say that she is the fairest lady that lives. Then I must go for my axe, said Gimli. But first I will plead this excuse, said Éomer. Had I seen her in other company, I would have said all that you could wish. But now I will put Queen Arwen Evenstar first, and I am ready to do battle on my own part with any who deny me. Shall I call for my sword? Then Gimli bowed low. Nay, you are excused from my part, lord, he said. You have chosen the evening, but my love is given to the morning, and my heart forebodes that soon it will pass away forever.
And people say Tolkien doesn't know how to write comedy. I mean, I love that.
It is fantastic.
That is such a great scene. I mean, yeah, it ends poignantly, no doubt. And we'll get to that. But I love that just kind of bro comedy. It's like it's like a buddy cop film. I don't know. There's something about it. The Éomer and Gimli thing is fun. So fast forward 3 days, and Éomer, now the king of Rohan, arrives with an Ered of his finest knights. And just a quick reminder, folks, a full Ered is 120 men.
And now it's time for another feast. After all the days of rejoicing after the wedding may be done, but it's time to honor Éomer and, of course, Théoden.
That's right. And there is a mention, and it's the only one, of Merethrond, the great hall of feasts. Now, in the appendix to the Silmarillion, elements in Quenya and Sindarin names, Christopher Tolkien tells us that Mereth means feast, and he references the Mereth Aduthad. That's the feast of reuniting that Fingolfin held near the pools of Ivrin after 20 years of the sun.
Now, in the same source, the next element, rond, is said to mean a vaulted or arched roof or a large hall or chamber so roofed. So we've got Nargothrond, Harthadrond, and Aglorond. And
Right.
it could also be implied to the heavens, hence the name Elrond, Star Dome.
Yeah, that doesn't mean, by the way, like star on his forehead. It's not the dome is not his like receding hairline here. No. And in Sauron Defeated, we get a visual of where Merethrond is. Merethrond, the Great Hall of Feasts in Minas Tirith, is said in Draft B to be in the Citadel. And then this is actually omitted in Draft C. On a page of rough drafting for this passage, Christopher says, my father dashed off a little plan of the Citadel. This is shown as a circle with 7 small circles, towers, at equal distances within the circumference, one of these standing beside the entrance. Beyond the Court of the Fountain is marked, at the center, the White Tower and Hall of the Kings, and beyond that again, on the west side of the Citadel, the King's House. To the right, north of the White Tower, is the Hall of Feasts. The outlines of other buildings are roughed in between the towers.
Interesting.
I love that. I want to see that drawing,
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
I know. I'm like, oh, I love maps like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's featured in Lord of the Rings Online.
I was thinking the same thing. I wonder
Yeah.
if Lotro's like, oh, well, we'll have to make it a circle with 7. Yeah.
Yeah,
we'll have to, It's been a while since I've been at the top circle of Minas Tirith. Yeah.
Yeah. But now we know where we're at,
Yeah.
the north side of the Citadel, in a domed feasting hall.
That's right.
Let's get back to the scene, where Éomer is filled with great wonder at all the beautiful women.
I'm not sure that's wonder, bro, but all right. You tell me it's wonder. I'll take your word for it. All right. It is worth noting, by the way, that Éomer's future wife, Lothiriel, the daughter of Prince Imrahil, might very well be here at this feast. We don't hear from her. We don't see that happens, but I like to think she's there because they get married 2 years later in Third Age 3021. Still, before he leaves the feast, Éomer calls for Gimli, and that wonderful chat ensues. I love it.
Yeah. So he leads with an odd question. Have you your axe ready? And I'm not sure Gimli gets where this is going.
I know, seriously. What? Why would it? What?
Yeah. Why would I bring it to a feast? But if you need me to, I can go get it in a hurry.
Well, whatever you need, King. Yeah.
Exactly. What's an axe? But this leads to the humorous exchange about Galadriel, the lady in the golden wood.
That's right. Now, we're going to go back to The Riders of Rohan. That's book 3, chapter 2. This is actually when there's still some genuine tension. This is certainly not a fun or humorous moment for Gimli and Éomer then. After Éomer suggests that the 3 hunters could be themselves net weavers and sorcerers, maybe, because they escaped the lady in the golden wood, Gimli threatens him. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you. I mean, it's still funny, but it's also on the verge of death. Yeah.
Yes. Later, after they've all become fast friends in the King of the Golden Hall, Éomer suggests they can set aside their argument. At least I will speak no evil again of the Lady of the Wood, he says. But that's not quite good enough for Gimli, who jokingly says he'll forget his wrath for a while.
Yeah.
But says that if Éomer ever sees Galadriel, then you shall acknowledge her the fairest of ladies, or our friendship will end.
I love that. Gimli's awesome, man. Now, in fairness, though, it's because Éomer has now also seen Arwen. And, that's got to be a tough call. I'm sure if Gimli Gimli, of course, would have met Arwen back at the Council of Elrond at the Hall of Fire when they had the feast before. Éomer jokingly asks, well then, should I call for my sword since you've sworn violence upon me for this disagreement? Oh.
And this ends with a beautiful reminder that while Arwen is the even star of her people, the beauty at the end of the ages of the elves, Galadriel is the morning, a link to the very beginning of days when the light of the trees still was.
Exactly.
And Galadriel's golden hair and Arwen's raven hair are further symbols of this.
Yeah,
most likely. It's interesting. We have types here, right? You can imagine a Middle Earth dating app where it's, are you morning or evening? Gimli fills out morning, Éomer fills out evening.
Exactly.
It's all set up.
I'm picturing speed dating at this feast, where everybody gets 5 minutes and then they slide over and talk to the next one. Or She was more beautiful. She's more morning. Yeah, you're pretty and all, but I'm not an evening type of guy.
I was thinking more they organized it that way, and Gimli's sort of like, where's the morning table?
Where's the morning table? That's right. He prefers the blondes over the brunettes, it sounds like. Yeah. Interesting stuff. But yeah, I think it is interesting. We've always known of Arwen as the even star. I think this is the first time we've specifically been told or specifically been given this identification of Galadriel with the morning, but I love it. I think it fits, you know? I mean, she is significantly older. I mean, other than Círdan, quite possibly the oldest elf in Middle-earth, you know, at this point in time. And certainly one of the very few remaining who would have seen the light of the trees herself. Boy, and yet both the morning and evening are fading. They're both going to be gone at some point in the... Well, you know, the evening's about to become mortal and the morning's about to say, I'm out of here. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, Alan, would you like to continue the reading for us?
I think I would. At last, the day of departure came, and a great and fair company made ready to ride north from the city. Then the kings of Gondor and Rohan went to the Hallows, and they came to the tombs in Rathdinan, and they bore away King Théoden upon a golden bier, and passed through the city in silence. Then they laid the bier upon a great wain, with riders of Rohan all about it, and his banner borne before, and Merry, being Théoden's esquire, rode upon the wain, and kept the arms of the king. For the other companions, steeds were furnished according to their stature, and Frodo and Samwise rode at Aragorn's side, and Gandalf rode upon Shadowfax, and Pippin rode with the knights of Gondor, and Legolas and Gimli, as ever, rode together upon Arad. In that riding went also Queen Arwen, and Celeborn and Galadriel with their folk, and Elrond and his sons, and the princes of Dol Amroth and of Ithilien, and many captains and knights. Never had any king of the Mark such company upon the road as went with Théoden, Thengel's son, to the land of his home. Without haste and at peace they passed into Anorion, and they came to the grey wood under Amondine, and there they heard a sound as of drums beating in the hills, though no living thing could be seen. Then Aragorn let the trumpets be blown, and heralds cried, Behold, the King Elessar is come! The forest of Drúadan he gives to Chan Buri-Chan and to his folk, to be their own forever, and hereafter let no man enter it without their leave. Then the drums rolled loudly and were silent.
So a brief reading here, but an important one.
Yeah.
There are two significant events happening. First, of course, is the departure of this fair company to return Théoden to the Mark.
That's right. And we start with Aragorn and Éomer as the kings going to the Hallows, and presumably with a few helpers carrying the body of Théoden out on a golden bier. And interestingly, the text here says they passed through the city in silence, but that wasn't always the case. As Christopher Tolkien points out in Sauron Defeated, an earlier draft had them passing through the city where all the people stood in silence, but the knights of Rohan that followed the bier sang in their own tongue a lament for the fallen.
Later, though, that was changed to the knights of Rohan that followed the bier walked also in silence, for the time for song was not yet come.
Okay. Well, you can certainly see then why he ended up landing where he did.
Exactly. Now, eventually they placed Théoden's body on a big wagon surrounded by Rohirrim, with his banner carried in front.
That must have been quite the sight. Now, as Théoden's esquire, Merry rides on that wagon itself, carrying Théoden's arms. I've got to imagine that the emotion of this moment for Merry is overwhelming, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, this is presumably the most significant role for anyone to take in this procession, right? And
he's the only one identified as being on the wagon itself,
right,
on the wagon.
And he's the one chosen to do that, which, you know, you can imagine for everything that's happened in Théoden's life, for it to be Merry being the one that's chosen for that role.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, one wonders if the person that would have been chosen, whoever it might have been, would have been a soldier who died on the field with Théoden at the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, a banner bearer or some of the other people that were of his household. But it is still a tremendous honor. And yet it's also got to be isolating. You know, we get this description of the other companions being given their rides. Merry's not with any of them.
Yeah.
he's kind of by himself on this wain.
Yeah, Frodo and Sam are on a pony of some kind, riding next to Aragorn. Gandalf is on Shadowfax, of course.
Well, of course.
Pippin, as a knight of Gondor, is riding with them.
Right, with the knights, right.
With the knights, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it must have been tough for Pippin as well, right?
Yeah.
Being separated yet again from Merry.
Pippin and Merry are not next to each other. Frodo and Sam are on a single pony, and they're riding next to Aragorn, so they've got plenty of company. Gandalf doesn't need any. But yeah, Pippin, I mean, Pippin's with Knights of Gondor, so some of these guys are maybe guys that he was with on the journey to the Black Gate and that he fought next to in that battle. I originally was thinking maybe Baragond would be with him, but actually probably not, because he's going to be with Faramir.
Faramir, yeah.
So Pippin's kind of on his own, and Merry is most definitely on his own.
Yeah, and presumably a lot of focus on Merry, like everyone would be looking at Merry.
Don't drop the swords.
Yeah, exactly.
For 15 days, he's sitting there going, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it. Don't drop
Good thing the roles weren't reversed and it wasn't Pippin up there.
Oh my goodness,
Pippin would have
thrown the thing off the wagon. So now, speaking of where Pippin would have ridden, Christopher Tolkien, in a note on this passage, says that in a rejected form of it, Pippin is said to have ridden with the Prince of Ithilien, for he was the esquire of the steward. Now, that's interesting. So Merry would have been the esquire for Théoden, and in this rejected version, Pippin was the esquire of Faramir.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting.
Didn't do that.
So as to the others, Legolas and Gimli are on Arod. No surprise there.
Of course.
And we get a rundown of the A-list celebrities on this trip, right? Arwen, Celeborn, Galadriel, and the rest of the Galadrim, right? Elrond, Elladan, Elrahir, Prince Imrahil, Prince Faramir.
And many who's who in Middle-earth, man.
Exactly. And many captains and knights, presumably Baragond, since he's captain of the White Company, the Guard of Faramir. And it's quite the escort for King Théoden to be returned to Rohan.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the text is not stretching the truth at all to say that such company upon the road, that there'd never been a king of the mark who'd been accompanied by this sort of escort.
Right.
And I mean, some of it's circumstantial in the sense that we're all sending people home. This is time for Galadriel and the Galadrim to go home. It's time for Elrond to go home. It's time for the hobbits to go home. So it is quite the gathering. Now, not surprisingly, the journey is without haste. In fact, as we'll see in the next section, it takes them 15 days to cover the distance. That's 3 times the number of days that it took Théoden to lead the Rohirrim to Minas Tirith from Harrenhal. So they're definitely not going at any sort of significant pace. And now we get to the second big moment in this very short reading, and it's their arrival at the Grey Wood beneath the mountain Amondine.
Yeah. And they can hear a sound like drums, but they couldn't see anyone or any living thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Aragorn has the trumpet sound, and the heralds cry out his ruling. He gives the forest to the Drúadan in perpetuity, making it illegal for men to enter their land without permission. You get the approving sound of drums, followed by silence.
And I'm trying to figure out like what's the threatening sound versus what's the approving sound? What's the thank you sound? Yeah. No, I know. It's good stuff. This actually brings up a moment that I meant to talk about last chapter with Sarah when the various embassies were coming to the new King Elessar. In a draft of that section, we read, "And the slaves of Mordor he set free and gave them all the lands about Lake Nurnen for their own." Okay, we all remember that part.
Mm-hmm.
Then the draft reads, "And last of all there came to him Chan Buri-Chan of the Wildwoods, and 2 of the headmen, and they were clad in garments of green leaves to do honor to the king, and they laid their foreheads on his feet. But he bade them rise up and blessed them, and gave them the forest of Drúadan for their own, so that no man should ever enter it without their leave."
And while Tolkien initially removed that from the last chapter, he used similar language here in a draft. "And they came to the Grey Wood under Amondine, and there beside the road in the shadow of the trees stood Chan of the Wildwoods, and 2 of his headmen beside him. And they were clad all in garments of green leaves to do honour to the king. For Chan Buri-Chan said, he was a great king. He drove away dark with bright iron. And now men of stone houses have king. He will not let dark come back." And he and his headmen laid their foreheads upon Aragorn's feet, and he bade them rise up, and he blessed them, and he gave them the forest of Drúadan to be their own, so that no man should ever enter it without their leave. And they bowed and vanished into the trees.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, finally, there's a part of me that kind of wishes we'd seen Khan one more time, you know? Such an interesting character, and it would have been good to see him. But I get it. I mean, they're very reclusive. That's kind of the whole point, and that's what Aragorn's respecting here is you don't want to interact with the rest of the world. You don't need to. That's totally okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, in some senses, it's handled on their own terms, right?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as much as I wanted to hear from him again.
Right. That's not what Khan wanted to do.
Yeah. That they're not. Yeah. So finally, Tolkien cut all that and replaced it with something virtually identical to what we have in the final text. But he did have one more bit that didn't make the final, and I kind of like this. And whoso slays one of his people slays the king's friends, which adds a bit of gravitas, a little bit of a threat. But in a way, it's an unnecessary threat because I think we all know if you start hunting the wild men now, the wild men will make your life very, very short.
Yep.
Yeah. Goodness. It also reminds me of what Aragorn will do in another year, couple of years time when he comes to the Shire and says the same thing, that men cannot cross this. You know, this is no longer a place where men can come through. They have to go around and giving it to them in perpetuity, which I love. All right. Well, since we don't have anything more really to discuss there, I'm going to have you pick up. You're going to skip about the first half of the next paragraph and then go from there.
Okay. For after 3 days, the men of the mark prepared the funeral of Théoden, and he was laid in a house of stone with his arms and many other fair things that he had possessed. And over him was raised a great mound, covered with green turves of grass and of white evermind. And now there were 8 mounds on the east side of the barrow field. Then the riders of the king's house upon white horses rode round about the barrow and sang together a song of Théoden, Thingol's son, that Gléwine his minstrel made. And he made no other song after. The slow voices of the riders stirred the hearts of even those who did not know the speech of that people. But the words of the song brought a light to the eyes of the folk of the mark, as they heard again afar the thunder of the hooves of the north, and the voice of Eöl crying above the battle upon the field of Celebrant. And the tale of the kings rolled on, and the horn of Helm was loud in the mountains, until the darkness came, and King Théoden arose, and rode through the shadow to the fire, and died in splendour, even as the sun, returning beyond hope, gleamed upon Mindolluin in the morning. Out of doubt, out of dark to the day's rising, he rode singing in the sun, sword unsheathing. Hope he rekindled, and in hope ended. Over death, over dread, over doom lifted, out of loss, out of life, unto long glory. But Mary stood at the foot of the green mound, and he wept. And when the song was ended, he arose and cried, Théoden King, Théoden King, farewell. As a father you were to me for a little while. Farewell.
Okay, I officially regret the ordering of the passages.
Why?
I really wish I'd read this one.
I thought you say because I would have read it better.
No. No, you read it fantastically, but you know how I feel about alliterative verse, and wow.
I know. When I saw that you'd given this to me, I'm like, yeah.
It's only one stanza, but oh my goodness, that's amazing. So Thank you. No, you did fantastic. I was just like, oh man, why was I so nuts? No. So obviously we skipped the first bit of that first paragraph, 15 days later, right? So that the Tale of Years tells us this is August 7th. And they arrive at Edoras, and we see that Medjugorje, that's the Golden Hall, is ready for a feast. And wow, it is a glorious description filled with light. And that's really quite the opposite of what it looked like when Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli first arrived, isn't it?
Yeah. The guards now lifted the heavy bars of the doors and swung them slowly inward, grumbling on their great hinges. The travellers entered. Inside it seemed dark and warm after the clear air upon the hill. The hall was long and wide and filled with shadows and half-lights.
Man, that is radically different now. I love it. And then, of course, the text says there was held the highest feast that it had known. Hammond and Skull suggest, and I think I completely agree with them, which, by the way, is always good advice. This is probably looking ahead to the feast after the funeral rather than to a separate feast held on the traveler's arrival at Edoras. makes sense to me.
Yeah, this makes sense given the next sentence leads directly to that funeral. 3 days later, so August 10th, Théoden is laid to rest on the east side of the barrows that lie before Edoras.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, when we first arrived here, we saw 7 mounds upon the left and 9 upon the right.
Right.
Now, these are the mounds of the kings of Rohan from when the realm was first established in Third Age 2510.
And that division between the two sets of mounds is where the line of descent changed. So the 9th king, so the 9 mounds upon the right, the 9th king was Helm Hammerhand. He died in 2759. His 2 sons had been killed in battles with the Dunlendings earlier that winter. That was the Long Winter. And that is going to be a great story when we reach the appendices next year, but it's also going to be a really cool film this December. I cannot wait to see that. But his mound is the 9th and last one on the right, which is the west side.
So, without a direct heir, Helm's nephew, the son of his sister, Freylaf, inherited the kingship, and his mound was the first on the left, in other words, east side.
Right.
Théoden's is the 8th and final mound on that line.
Correct. Now, a third line will be established when Éomer eventually dies, as he is not a direct heir of Théoden, but is instead his sister son. Theodred would actually have been king, of course, but he was killed in the first battle of the Fords of Isen, believe it or not, just 8 months ago, February 25th.
Yeah. I mean, what a moment at this funeral. The riders of Théoden's house on their white steeds, riding around the burial mound and singing a song written by Théoden's minstrel, Glewine. And as with the other Rohirric names, this is Old English, in this case, lover of music or lover of minstrel. From Gleo, music, a song, and of course, Wine, friend.
Yeah.
We'll see that latter one a lot, but Gleo is not as common.
That's true. And what a song it is. I mean, he goes out on a high note, Glewine. It may be his last song, but it's the best. It is so powerful in Old English or Rohirric that even the folks here who don't speak the language, and let's be honest, that's going to be most of the ones not from Rohan, they are moved deeply by the singing.
Yeah. It powerfully moves the people of Rohan, of course, as they
yeah.
hear the tale of their people told from the beginning, the thunder of the hooves of the north, through Eol and his saving of Gondor, all the way through Helm, and then darkness and the ride of Théoden to Mundberg.
And the thing is, this song is long. We only get one verse. I wish we got the whole thing, but we get one verse translated to Westron, but man, it is glorious. And it speaks to that moment of Gandalf's arrival and the moment that Théoden chose to step out into the sun, to change the direction of his life from the despair that he was living in under the influence of Wormtongue and of Saruman indirectly, to hope. And that one line, hope he rekindled and in hope ended. Mm-hmm. That may be one of the most fitting and poignant lines describing Théoden that I've ever read, and I've read a lot.
Yep.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
And of course, his death was a glorious thing because it led to that hope.
He slew the Black Captain, right? I mean, he killed the head of the Easterlings, or the Southerns, I should say. And yeah, it was fantastic. And of course, the alliteration here, out of doubt, out of dark to the days, right? It's so beautiful. But that next to last line is the one alliteration wise that gets to me. Over death, over dread, over doom lifted. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it speaks so much to Théoden and he really was almost in a state of death before he died, right? He might as well have been dead. He was useless. He had no purpose, no function, no glory, no honor. And he overcame that, right? He overcame that death. He overcame the dread of living out his days in the dark hall and was lifted up to this glorious fate, right? To this doom of helping to save Gondor, of riding to the rescue on the Pelennor, of slaying the Black Serpent. Oh, just amazing.
Yep.
So rich.
And along the way, rekindling the hope, and then, of course, ending in hope, as the line says. Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, he rekindled his own hope and ended in hope as well, but it's not just him.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's true of Théoden, but it's true also of the impact that Théoden had in the world. Yeah. In terms of rekindling the hope of his people and rekindling the hope even of Gondor. Oh, fantastic.
There's no better way of conveying that than alliterative verse.
No,
I mean,
there really isn't. Yeah. There's something about alliterative verse that's just rich beyond. Oh, I regret skipping the poetry when I was younger in my earlier reads. Yeah.
Same.
Fantastic stuff. Oh.
Yeah.
And then Mary.
Yeah, Mary, poor sweet Mary, weeps for the loss of this father figure, a man who he admired, loved, and respected.
Yeah, deeply.
Yeah. Going back to the passing of the Grey Company, Book 5, Chapter 2, we read, "Filled suddenly with love for this old man, he knelt on one knee and took his hand and kissed it. 'May I lay the sword of Meriadoc of the Shire on your lap, Théoden King?' he cried. 'Receive my service if you will.' 'Gladly will I take it,' said the king, and laying his long old hands upon the brown hair of the hobbit, he blessed him. 'Rise now, Meriadoc, Esquire of Rohan of the household of Meduseld,' he said. 'Take your sword and bear it unto good fortune.' 'As a father you shall be to me,' said Merry. 'For a little while,' said Théoden.
Oh, and those words are echoed in Mary's weeping here.
Yep.
I always think of the moment that he had with Théoden at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields when, he's with Théoden after he's been mortally wounded. He's dying. And Théoden tells him, 'Live now in blessedness, and when you sit in peace with your pipe, think of me, for never now shall I sit with you in Meduseld as I promised, or listen to your herblore.'"
Yeah.
And I know we didn't put this in the notes, but that, of course, takes us to the moment of the Houses of Healing when he goes, "No, I don't think I'm going to smoke a pipe again."
Yep.
And he talks about this sorrow, and Aragorn's like, "But that's exactly why you should smoke a pipe again."
Mm-hmm.
Think of him, remember who he was. And he does. And it's beautiful, but this is such a poignant farewell for Mary. And it's got to be just a heartbreaking loss for him at this point.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe brought home all the more because of his role as the esquire, carrying those arms and being in that wagon for those 2 weeks of the journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's one thing I know you've experienced this with the losses you've had in your life, is that so much of the ritual ultimately helps with the grieving, I think. There's a reason why we have the rituals that we do around
yes,
death.
There is. Absolutely.
And I think this was, something that in a way Mary needed.
Yeah,
right?
He did. This is a final farewell, and he recalls those words, "As a father you were to me for a little while." He needed to be able to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah. But boy, he'll always remember him. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out what Hammond and Skulls say about Théoden's funeral. First, they observe that there are no religious elements to the ceremony.
Yeah,
it's something that you and Sarah talked about in the postscript of episode 321.
That's right. And what it does have, though, rather than those religious elements, are elements that are similar to those involved in the burial of famous leaders in the early medieval period in Europe. That's Hammond and Skull's words. And that includes things like being buried with his weapons and other items, the raising of a mound over the grave, and then the king's followers riding around the mound. That's also historical. And of course, a song that records the deeds of the dead king. And we'll talk a lot more at length about that in the postscript. I think you're going to be interested to hear a couple of the funeral details that we will talk about then. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Okay, Alan, do you want to read a little more?
I think I do. We've got time for a couple of more passages here. "When the burial was over and the weeping of women was stilled, and Théoden was left at last alone in his barrow, then folk gathered to the golden hall for the great feast, and put away sorrow, for Théoden had lived to full years, and ended in honor no less than the greatest of his sires. And when the time came that in the custom of the mark they should drink to the memory of the kings, Éowyn, lady of Rohan, came forth, golden as the sun and white as snow, and she bore a filled cup to Éomer. Then a minstrel and loremaster stood up and named all the names of the lords of the mark in their order: Eorl the young, and Brego, builder of the hall, and Aldor, brother of Baldur the hapless, and Freya, and Freywine, and Goldwine, and Deor, and Gram, and Helm, who lay hid in Helm's Deep when the mark was overrun. And so ended the 9 mounds of the west side, for in that time the line was broken. And after came the mounds of the east side: Frealaf, Helm's sister son, and Leofa, and Walda, and Folka, and Folkwine, and Fengel, and Thengel, and Théoden the latest. And when Théoden was named, Éomer drained the cup. Then Éowyn bade those that served to fill the cups, and all there assembled rose and drank to the new king, crying, Hail Éomer, king of the Mark. At the last, when the feast drew to an end, Éomer arose and said, Now this is the funeral feast of Théoden the king, but I will speak ere we go of tidings of joy, for he would not grudge that I should do so, since he was ever a father to Éowyn my sister. Hear then, all my guests, fair folk of many realms, such as have never before been gathered in this hall. Faramir, steward of Gondor and prince of Ithilien, asks that Éowyn, lady of Rohan, should be his wife, and she grants it full willing. Therefore they shall be troth-plighted before you all. And Faramir and Éowyn stood forth, and set hand in hand, and all there drank to them and were glad. Thus, said Éomer, is the friendship of the Mark and of Gondor bound with a new bond, and the more do I rejoice. No niggard are you, Éomer, said Aragorn, to give thus to Gondor the fairest thing in your realm. Then Éowyn looked in the eyes of Aragorn, and she said, Wish me joy, my liege lord and healer. And he answered, I have wished thee joy ever since first I saw thee. It heals my heart to see thee now in bliss. Oh, I love that line.
Yeah.
Oh, and that might be why I let you have the alliterative verse, so that I could say.
So you would get that one. That's
I
fair.
would get Aragorn's line to Éowyn. It's fair trade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So after the funeral is finished, the crying is complete, and the king is left to rest.
Yeah.
And it's time for a great feast. Yet another element in older traditions, here going all the way back to Old Norse literature.
That's right. And again, thank you to Hammond and Skull for pointing us to a work that, well, I got to be honest, I would not otherwise have looked at. The Road to Hell, a study of the conception of the dead in Old Norse literature by Hilda Roderick Ellis. And I got to say, kudos to Ellis for the wonderful title, by the way. It's Hell, H-E-L, is in the Norse. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
It's paved with good intentions, as you all know.
Hammond and Skull quote Ellis as saying that throughout the sagas, it is made clear that an important way of paying honor to the dead was to hold a funeral feast in his memory, and this was important for the living as well as the dead, since it was the feast that the son took over the inheritance of his father.
That's right. Now, Ellis goes on to quote the Icelandic writer Snorri, who says that a funeral feast should be made in honor of king or jarl, that he who held it and who was to succeed to the inheritance should sit on the step before the high seat, up to the time when the cup was born, and which was called Bragi's cup. Then he should stand up with the cup of Bragi and make a vow, and drink of the cup afterwards. Then he should proceed to the high seat which his father had had, and then he succeeded to all the inheritance after him. Sounds like this exact ceremony, just about.
Exactly. And as the Rohirrim descend from the Northmen, the Airthead, it's not a surprise that they followed that tradition.
Exactly. Yeah.
Éowyn bringing the cup to Éomer. She's described as golden as the sun and white as snow, which is both like and unlike how she first appeared in The King of the Golden Hall, where we read, Strong she seemed and stern as steel, a daughter of kings. Thus Aragorn for the first time in the full light of day beheld Éowyn, lady of Rohan, and thought her fair, fair and cold, like a morning of pale spring that is not yet come to womanhood.
Well, you're right. There are some things that are like and some things that are very different. There's definitely that sort of icy feel, right? The stern as steel, fair and cold, pale spring. That's sort of echoed with the white as snow, but it's countered by this golden as the sun. There's a warmth to her now, a radiance that maybe wasn't present at that time, probably due to her limited role. I mean, talk about a terrible place to get stuck in, you know?
Yeah.
But that is a beautiful way of putting it. Golden as the sun and white as snow. I love this. Well, going back to sort of the funeral traditions, and certainly something that we would expect to see in a moment like Snorri described, we get a minstrel then telling of each of the lords of the Mark in order. It's a different song than the one written by Glioine, but it covers much of that same history, right? We get the names of all the kings in each of the lines. We start with the first line of Eorl, the lord of the Eotheod, who became the first king of the Mark.
Yep, as well as the second line, buried on the eastern side, starting with Freyalaf. And then, just as Snorri described it, Éomer drinks the cup when Théoden is named, and everyone toasts the new king of the Mark.
That's right. Now, we will be doing a little bit of word nerdery on the names of these kings. There's too many of them to do here. We'd be here for another half hour, which is why it's going to be in our postscript. So if you're not on Patreon, please consider that. You'll be able to access to all of our episode postscripts. And here we're going to have word nerdery and discussion on the names of the kings. Now, before we get to another really important event, I want us to take a quick digression into Sauron Defeated, because there was almost something else to talk about here, which means we're going to talk about it anyway. In an earlier draft, after Éowyn brings the cup and the minstrel sang about all the kings, we read this. And then Gandalf arose and bid all men rise, and they rose. And he said, Here is a last tale ere the feast endeth. Last, but not least, for I name now those who shall not be forgotten, and without whose valour naught else that was done would have availed. And I name before you all Frodo of the Shire, and Samwise his servant. And the bards and the minstrels should give them new names, Bronwë Athan Harthad, and Harthad Uluithiad. Endurance beyond hope, and hope unquenchable. Oh, those are the coolest names, and it's the only place we get them. I love those names.
I mean, endurance beyond hope, I love. Just this idea of even when hope's gone, you
just keep going. And that's what Frodo did. He was truly hopeless by the end, but he kept enduring. And boy, is hope unquenchable a description of Sam from the get-go?
Yes, it's perfect. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Mr. Frodo. I mean, I know we've just thrown the ring of the fire and there's a volcanic eruption going on behind us, but can we go out of these there cracks of doom here? The guy's always got hope. Always has hope. You just can't get rid of it. You can't shut him down. Oh, man. Hope,
great names.
Unquenchable, and endurance beyond hope. And of course, they sound even better in Sindarin. Bronwë Athan Harthad and Harthad Uluithiad. Whoa! Woo! Good stuff. Yeah. But there was more in Sauron Defeated, wasn't there?
Yes. And while everyone drank to their new names, Tolkien adds, but Sam went very red and murmured to Frodo. By the way, just a little aside. Uh-huh. Sam, again, word counting here. Sam is by far the character that blushes or turns red the most if you do the counts. Yeah. Some of the characters do, but Sam easily takes the prize. I think he does it as many times as all the other characters put together.
I am not surprised by that. I'm not surprised by that at all. Yeah.
Sam went very red and murmured to Frodo, I don't know what my dad would think of the change. He was always against outlandish names. I love the fact that he gets given this wonderful name, and the first thing he's worried about is, I don't know my dad would approve. Like it. The gentry can do as they please, he said, with their Rorises and their Ronshoes, but for plain folk, something shorter wears better. But even if I could say the name, I think it don't suit.
Poor Sam. The Roriuses and Ronchuses. Christopher Tolkien explains what he means by that. He says that Ronchus, and that's spelled Ronshus, Ronchus, is evidently the gaffer's clipped form of Garantius, the name of the old Took.
Yep.
So Garantius or Garantius. And I suppose that he attached, Christopher says, the learned or highfalutin ending us to Rory. So Roriuses. So he's talking about Rory Brandybuck.
Yep.
So he's talking about Rory Brandybuck and the old Took when he says they're Roriuses and Ronchuses.
Yeah, it's funny that ending, that adding the US ending is, of course, I think, an association with Latin.
Yes.
Because that's how, Tolkien always trying to come up with the analogies that would make most sense to us. If we wanted to make something sound learned or highfalutin, highfalutin, you can imagine us trying to make it sound more Latin-like. And that's
absolutely.
So that's what he's done here in the translation.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Still, even though Tolkien cuts this segment, Christopher points out that the gaffer's philosophy on fancy names is not lost.
No, it's not.
Later in the Grey Havens, when Sam is discussing what to name his oldest child, the gaffer is quoted as advising, make it short, and then you won't have to cut it short before you can use it.
The gaffer's wisdom is interesting. I'm just going to leave it there. Sometimes you just want to smack the guy, but other times he makes sense. It's just, he's that uncle at Thanksgiving that you kind of are like not looking forward to having to have conversations with, but you leave going, he's not quite so bad. He's a little kooky, but he's not quite as bad as I remembered. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, coming back to the text in the book as opposed to Sauron defeated, even though I'm always going to love Branwe Athar Harthad and Harthad Uluithiad, this day has been about laying Théoden to rest and honoring Éomer as the new king. But the new king has something very important to announce, saying, rightly, I am sure, that Théoden would not begrudge the time or attention.
Yeah, exactly. And I love this line, since he was ever a father to Éowyn, my sister.
And he was. I mean,
yeah.
I know I don't have it off the top of my head, but they were very young children when their parents died and Théoden took them in. I want to say 9 and 7 or something like that. They were young. They weren't even teenagers. And it is just a beautiful story of how much he loved Éowyn as a daughter. Yeah.
Yep. And of course, Éowyn.
Oh, yeah.
Loved him.
Loved him as a father. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And so he announces with plenty of fanfare the engagement of Faramir and Éowyn.
Plenty of fanfare. Yeah, it's quite well done. Like, okay, thanks for the intro, sir. I do want to note, though, just as we observed in The Steward and the King, even the engagement announcement is phrased to give Éowyn agency and choice. Faramir asks, and she grants it full willing. And, you know, when we go back to those episodes in The Steward and the King where Sarah and I talked about that, that was the whole core of it.
Yes.
Everything that Faramir did was to give her choice and freedom, agency, something that she had lacked virtually her entire life.
Yep.
Yeah. So beautiful.
And they stand hand in hand while everyone drinks to them and celebrates.
Yeah, of course. More good news. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
We got a new king and we're going to have a wedding. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Éomer pointing out that this binds Gondor and Rohan even more closely together, which is itself reason to celebrate.
So this may be the first, high-level marriage between, in this case, nobility of Gondor, Faramir, and nobility of Rohan. But it isn't the first time that we've had marriages between folk of Gondor and folk of Rohan. In fact, Théoden's mother was Morwen Steelsheen. She was the queen to King Thengel, but she actually was originally from Belfalas. She was descended from a former prince of Dol Amroth. She was actually a kinsman of Prince Imrahil. So, in fact, Théoden was born in Gondor. So there's definitely a lot of relation between these two countries, but this definitely brings them closer together, no doubt about it. Anyway, Aragorn's involvement here at the end, definitely worth noting. He praises Éomer's generosity, and I want to make a real quick important note. Niggard is a word that means mean or stingy person, miser. It is not etymologically related or connected in any way, shape, or form to the deeply offensive racist term that is phonetically similar. That's actually the only similarity.
Yeah, I presume it is cognate with, like, if something's niggling at you or something like that. Right?
I don't know, actually. That's a very good question. I'll have to check out.
That's what occurred to me.
Yeah.
But certainly the word used here by Tolkien dates to the 14th century.
Right.
While the term derived from Spanish and French words for black didn't arrive till the 18th century.
That's right. Now, that said, it isn't a word that I use in my everyday vocabulary, not just because it's obscure, but because I want to avoid possible confusion and offense.
Yeah.
But it is the word used here, so we felt it important to explain why that word was used, just as we did when Tolkien used the word faggot to talk about a bundle of sticks that were going to be thrown on a fire. And it's just one of those things where, in that case, it actually is the same word. This is a different word, but it's not only a different word, obviously, it has a very radically different meaning. So just to be clear.
Yep. Important to point out. Yeah.
Definitely.
So Éowyn asks for him to wish her joy, asks Aragorn.
Yeah.
Acknowledging his role as both her liege lord, since she will be a Gondorian subject as the wife of the Prince of Ithilien, and importantly, as her healer.
Yeah, love that.
And there's this beautiful and touching use of thee repeatedly, so she and we don't miss the point.
Yeah.
And you might remember Alan and Don talking about this in the Passing of the Grey Company last season. First in episode 269, when you talked about the message from Arwen to Aragorn, I send thee what I've made for thee. And then in episodes 271 and 272, in Éowyn's conversation with Aragorn, when she suddenly switches from the formal deferential you to the intimate thee.
That's right. And she wasn't so much assuming a level of intimacy that wasn't there. She was actually inviting that level of intimacy. She was quite literally, as we talked about in that episode, confessing her love for Aragorn in her choice of second person pronoun, which is Amazing. And once again, demonstrating Tolkien's incredibly amazing, masterful use of language. She kept saying thee to Aragorn, thee and thou and thy, but he kept keeping his distance with you. Mm-hmm. He knew that to use the familiar in that moment with her would be to give Éowyn a false impression of his feelings for her.
Yeah. But here, now that she's betrothed to his steward and he's married, that is now that it's safe to be close to her as a friend. He uses that informal, close, intimate second-person pronoun.
That's beautiful. He's showing that he did not forget that, right?
Yep.
He remembers her doing that and returns that love in a platonic way, knowing that he couldn't have done that then without giving a false impression. But I have to say the content of what he says is no less crucial than the fact that he's using that beautiful second-person pronoun. He's always, from the very beginning, wanted the best for her, right? He's wanted for her to find joy. And now, even though he's the healer, right? The hands of the king are the hands of a healer. He himself is healed by seeing her happy now.
Yeah, there's such kindness in the way he puts it. Yeah.
Tenderness, such a tender heart here. And it's so beautiful. I know Sarah and I gave Aragorn a proper hard time in The Steward of the King because we were comparing the way he spoke to her in terms of her duty and her responsibility, and the way Faramir did in terms of his empathy and his understanding of why she was struggling so much. But this is a wonderfully redemptive moment for Aragorn here as he really just establishes this connection with her that, you know, now that she understands who she is herself.
Yeah. And
now that she's sort of healed, thanks to Aragorn and thanks in part to Faramir as well, of course, thanks to herself, she's able to embrace the closeness with Aragorn without it being inappropriate in any way. So, Well, James, you've got the last reading of this episode. Would you take us out after you skip the next paragraph?
At the last, before the guests set out, Éomer and Éowyn came to Merry, and they said, "Farewell now, Merry Dock of the Shire, and Holdwinner of the Mark. Ride to good fortune, and ride back soon to our welcome." And Éomer said, "Kings of old would have laden you with gifts that Owain could not bear for your deeds upon the fields of Munburg, and yet you will take naught, you say, but the arms that were given to you. This I suffer, for indeed I have no gift that is worthy. But my sister begs you to receive this small thing as a memorial of Dernhelm and of the horns of the mark at the coming of the morning." Then Éowyn gave to Merry an ancient horn, small but cunningly wrought, all of fair silver with a baldric of green, and writes had engraven upon it swift horsemen riding in a line that wound about it from the tip to the mouth, and there were set runes of great virtue. "This is an heirloom of our house," said Éowyn. "It was made by the dwarves, and came from the hoard of Scuther the Worm. Eorl the Young brought it from the north. He that blows it at need shall set fear in the hearts of his enemies and joy in the hearts of his friends, and they shall hear him and come to him." Then Merry took the horn, for it could not be refused, and he kissed Éowyn's hand, and they embraced him, and so they parted for that time.
Oh, I don't want to leave. I'm glad we're coming back next week. We skipped the first paragraph here, but we see the preparation of those who are going to leave. So that would be Aragorn and the Knights of Gondor, Galadriel, Celeborn, and the Galadrim, as well as Elrond, Elladan, and Elrohir, but not Arwen.
Yeah, Arwen remains, along with Faramir and Imrahil, and she says goodbye to her brothers.
This is as good a point as any to speculate about what they end up choosing, right? It's never stated. We know that they stay behind for a little while, but we don't know whether they join their father in the Undying Lands or if either or both choose mortality. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There's no clue given.
No clue at all.
I almost wonder whether they echoed the choices of their father and that one might have chosen like Elros. You know, like one might choose
like an Elros Elrond,
splitting it again.
I mean, that would be poetic, but again, there's no.
But there's certainly no clue
evidence
to that.
of it. Yeah.
And they don't have the reason to stay behind. You know, like Arwen does. I mean, Arwen falls in love with a mortal. She makes Luthien's choice. So I tend to think that they would have said goodbye to their sister here.
Yep.
and then rejoined their parents because, of course, their mother has been over in the Undying Lands for quite some time now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I suspect they both went. There's
Yeah,
no
I do too.
reason to think otherwise.
No, there really isn't. I can't imagine unless they'd fallen in love with a mortal woman, but I think we would have heard about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they stayed, we probably would have heard about it.
Yeah, I think so. And that's actually a very good point. If they had done the unusual thing, I think we would have read that. Therefore, they went.
Plus, I think it would have taken away from the significance of Arwen's choice.
That's fair.
It's kind of like if all the siblings chose, what's the big deal? You know?
Elrond's like, what did I do, man? He gets over there to Valinor, and his wife's like, where are the kids? Well, honey, I need to explain.
Yeah, poor Elrond.
I know, poor Elrond. You know, my brother and now all my kids. Man, he's had a lot of loss.
Yeah. Exactly.
Also, my father's a star. I haven't seen him since I was like 5. Yeah. And then there's the final conversation that she has with Elrond. I'm actually glad that we don't get to see the details of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been absolutely filled with sorrow at what is to be an eternal parting, a parting that elves can't comprehend. That sort of parting. I mean, not since Luthien has an elf given up their immortality / serial longevity. This is a fate that Elrond could not have even imagined or conceived for the first, let's be honest, 2,700 years of her life.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. 2,700 years plus. And then you meet this guy. I mean, I know that makes it sound like he's just some guy. Zaphod's just this guy.
He's just this guy, you know.
But yeah, for that long, for nearly 3 millennia, for an age, he's imagining, just like every other elf, that I'm going to live forever with my kids. I'm going to go back to, even after his wife chooses to go to the Undying Lands after her capture and torture by the orcs. Okay, no big deal. We'll get to be reunited with her in the Undying Lands, the 4 of us, I should say. We're all going to go. We're going to go join her over there. Wait a minute, Arwen, you're what? You're what now? This is unimaginable. The sorrow that Elrond must have been. Well, and he says so in the appendices, right? He says to Aragorn, whatever happens, this is going to suck. Is basically what he says. You know, I mean, either you lose and the world gets wiped out by Sauron, or you win and I lose my daughter.
Right.
That's a terrible, terrible situation for Elrond to be in. And he's handled it with, frankly, quite a bit of dignity.
Yes.
Bringing the scepter of Innuminus to hand to Aragorn at the wedding.
Yep.
But I am actually glad we don't get the details of that chat. That'd be hard.
Yeah, I am too.
It's almost one of those intimate moments that you'd feel like you don't have the right to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Sometimes I get that feeling when I'm reading the letters.
True.
You know, the letters,
That's
especially
true.
to his kids or to Edith. You're like, I shouldn't be reading this. Really? Christopher, you want me to read this? Okay, I will.
Yeah. Christopher allowed it. So.
That's why I'm okay with it. But yeah, sometimes I feel a little like a creeper. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, speaking of things we are allowed to read.
Yeah.
We do get to read some of the partings. And before everyone leaves, King Éomer and Éowyn come up to Merry. And they call him by 2 names, Meriadoc of the Shire and Holdwinner of the Mark.
That's right. Well, Holdwina comes from Old English, not surprisingly. In this case, hold means faithful or loyal. And then, of course, we've seen now many times the familiar ending wina, which means friend. So he's a faithful or loyal friend. Beautiful.
And they wish him a beautiful and clearly Rohirric farewell. Ride to good fortune and ride back soon to our welcome.
I love that. Absolutely love that.
And just as Aragorn knew that no gift could equal Frodo's deeds, Éomer knows no gift could equal Merry's.
It doesn't mean they shouldn't be giving gifts, though. I mean, come on, Aragorn and Éomer. You can do better than this. Aragorn, just take what you want. Just take what you want.
It's a recognition.
It is, yeah.
And while Éomer wants to give him more gifts than a wagon could carry.
At least he has some ideas, right? This isn't like, I don't know what to get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Merry won't accept anything more than the sword and armor given to him when he became a Thane, which is just, that's so touching given all we've seen about the relationship between Merry and Théoden.
You'd think there'd be some maybe personal possession of Théoden's that he would want to take as a memorial, but he doesn't. No, he only wants the arms. Okay, fine, Éomer says, I don't have a worthy gift anyway, but my sister's not going to take no for an answer. So
blame her.
Trust me, you don't want to get on her bad side. On her behalf, please take this thing. I want to linger, though, on this line. As a memorial, of Durnhelm.
Mm-hmm.
Question. Does this mean the person of Durnhelm is no more? Or are we just talking about a memorial of the deeds of Durnhelm? I mean, memorial is usually used of people who are dead.
Yeah, I really wish Sarah was here to.
I know. I want to ask her this question.
I love her thoughts on this because I know, she's talked a lot about the fact that Durnhelm is not a fake or facade.
It's not a costume or a persona.
Right, exactly.
It's a literal part of who she is, or at least who she was.
Yeah, and that's the question. Is it that now she's got choices? Now she's got autonomy and agency.
Yeah.
Is that what enables her to put Durnhelm aside? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think part of me thinks, okay, it's got to be in memorial of the deeds of Durnhelm. But we use memorial pretty much exclusively of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
We might say remembrance of the deeds or something like that. And he doesn't say deeds. It's specifically a memorial of Durnhelm and of the horns at the Pelennor, which are, well, that's a moment that's never going to happen again. Right. So that moment's in the past and is gone. Is that also the same of Durnhelm? I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. You're right. I'm going to have to ask Sarah this one.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, folks.
Whether she agrees with us or not, she will have fantastic insights into this question.
She will. No, I agree 100%.
It'd be worth asking. Yeah. So what is this thing that Éowyn gives to Merry? It's a silver horn with a green strap or belt engraved with horsemen and runes. Éowyn explains how old this is, and it is old.
Boy, it sure is. Yeah.
The dwarves originally made it, like all the good stuff, and it came from Scatha's hoard.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we'll talk about in the mailbag, this means the horn was taken from Scatha's hoard at least 1,000 years ago. Maybe, around Third Age 2000 as we'll get to. But who knows how much earlier than that this horn was crafted by the dwarves. I mean, it could be significantly older.
Yeah. And we also get a description of this horn that sounds a little like Boromir's horn, right? It's a great horn of the wild ox of the east, bound with silver and written with ancient characters.
Oh, wow,
if it be blown at need, anywhere within the bounds of Gondor, as the realm was of old, its voice will not pass unheeded.
Yeah. Okay. So the horns are made of different material. You got ox horn versus a silver horn, but the ox horn is bound with silver. And they both are written with ancient characters, and they both are mentioned to, if they're blown at need, something will happen.
Yep. The term is almost identical, right? At need, that phrase, at need.
Blows it at need, or if it be blown at need. Yeah. My goodness, that really is similar. But different effects, right? With Boromir's horn, it was that it would be heard throughout the entire realm. Mm-hmm. And presumably then people would come to your rescue. Here, it's got this AoE effect, right? An area of effect skill. This is like a nice
two ways, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's both a buff and a curse, right? I mean, it gives +2 to your armor saves, but it also gives -2 to your opponents to hit rolls or something.
Exactly. Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty cool. I like that. And interestingly, that effect that it has, right, to make the enemies afraid and to encourage their friends, we're going to see that come into play later.
Right. Yes, exactly. There's a payoff to this.
Yeah, there is. Pay attention, folks. This comes back. Yeah.
Exactly. So Merry accepts the gift. He can't say no to Éowyn.
No.
He kisses her hand and embraces both Éowyn and the king before parting.
That's right. Kings of old would have laden you with gifts that a Wayne could not bear for your deeds within this episode, James. And yet you will take naught, you say. This I suffer, for indeed I have no gift that is worthy. But my barkeep begs you to receive this large burlap sack. What does Bartleman have in the mailbag for us, James?
Okay. So Alan W. wrote in a while back with a question that's perfect for today's episode. What do we know about Scatha the Worm beyond the fact that he was killed by Fram? How did one guy kill a dragon? When did this happen?
Oh my. Well, Alan, I have to say we don't know much, but James and I are happy to share the extent of our very limited knowledge. First, I want to read from Appendix A. Frumgar, they say, was the name of the chieftain who led his people to Eotheod. Of his son, Fram, they tell that he slew Scatha, the great dragon of Ered Mithrin, and the land had peace from the long worms afterwards. Thus Fram won great wealth, but was at feud with the dwarves who claimed the hoard of Scatha. Fram would not yield them a penny, and sent to them instead the teeth of Scatha made into a necklace, saying, "Jewels such as these you will not match in your treasuries, for they are hard to come by. That sounds like a Rohirric guy, just like basically daring them. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like Helm going outside. Hey, do you want to go outside? One punch dead. I mean, that's kind of this guy. Some say that the dwarves slew Fromm for this insult. There was no great love between Eotheod and the dwarves.
And as for when it happened, we aren't given a date as to when Fromm slew Scatha,
Right.
but we have something that gives us a bit to speculate on. The Tale of Years says that Frumgar, Fromm's father, leads the Eotheod into the north in Third Age 1977. So it's a safe guess to say somewhere around Third Age 2000. That puts this event a little over 1,000 years ago.
Exactly. We're in Third Age 3019 now. I mean, that's 2000 plus or minus, right? I mean,
Right.
plus or minus 5, maybe even 10 years. How did one guy kill a dragon? Well, I'll give you this tale. Then Turambar summoned all his will and courage and climbed the cliff alone and came beneath the dragon. Then he drew Gurthang, and with all the might of his arm and of his hate, he thrust it into the soft belly of the worm, even up to the hilts. But when Glaurung felt his death pang, he screamed, and in his dreadful throe he heaved up his bulk and hurled himself across the chasm, and there lay lashing and coiling in his agony. And he set all in a blaze about him, and beat all to ruin, until at last his fires died, and he lay still. Now, here's the thing. We're not given any details of the battle between Fromm and Scatha, though I think it's probably a little bit like what we just read.
Mm-hmm.
Dragons typically have soft underbellies, or at least chinks in their armor like Smaug. I mean, from Beowulf to Sigurd, dragons can be defeated by men.
Indeed. But why don't we know much about this
That's
story?
a really good question, actually.
Why aren't there paragraphs in the various drafts that give us Scatha's backstory and why the dwarves might have taken such offense at Fromm's reply?
Right.
Well, we've got an answer to that, but it's not exciting. Christopher Tolkien explains that the early draft had Éowyn saying that this horn is an heirloom, sure, but that in the deeps of time it was made for our forefathers by the dwarves, and Eöl the Young brought it from the north.
So no mention of Scatha at all. And Christopher concludes with this. The statement that the horn came from the hoard of Scatha the Worm entered on the galley proof. So as somebody who's written a book and had a set of galley proofs, that's very late in the process, folks. That's like the last thing before it's printed. And that explains why we don't know more than what we've just shared.
It's funny, though, to think that his job was essentially just proofreading for mistakes, for typos.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this can't go out until I add that it's Scatha the Worm.
It had to come from Scatha the Worm. That
was so important. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man,
also, just a bit of word nerdery on Scatha.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, it originates in Old English, of course.
Shocker.
It's a modernization of the word Shaetha, which means injurer, enemy, or robber. And that's where we also get the modern English word scathe.
Oh, yeah, like a scathing reply or something like that. Yeah. Okay, fascinating stuff. Well, folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast, but come back again next week when we meet a very old friend with a lot to say.
Home. Well, that should be good. Sorry. Folks,
fun.
Al and I want to thank the members of Team PPP, editor Jordan Rennells, Barleyman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
And please take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. That's where you'll find show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get PPP merch, including chapter-specific artwork from Megan.
Please take a moment to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast has always been about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. We get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
Now, we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, and Joshua in Massachusetts.
There's also Lucy in Texas, Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, John in Japan, Olivia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, Kevin in Massachusetts, and another Paul in Colorado. Thank you all so much for your support.
Indeed, thank you very much.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favourite podcast app.
And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your gifts from Dragon's Hordes to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure to still email the question to Barliman, though. Even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to sort through. We'll try to get to you as soon as we're able.
Indeed. As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
Ride to good fortune and ride back soon to our welcome.